International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
President Abdelmadjid Tebboune and his Iranian counterpart Ebrahim Raisi have affirmed their convergence of views on various regional and international issues, notably the support for just causes around the world, with the Palestinian cause on the top of the list. And President Raisi praised what he described as the excellent organization of the 7th GECF summit and congratulated President Tebboune for the success of this global meeting. And Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Army General Said Shangriha, has been received by Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense of the State of Qatar, Khalid bin Mohammed Al Attiyah, as part of his official visit to Qatar. And as the Israeli army or occupation army pursued its bombardments of Gaza, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris called for an immediate ceasefire to allow in aid to the territory threatened by famine. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. Algeria and Iran have affirmed their convergence of views on various regional and international issues, notably the support for just causes around the world, with the Palestinian cause on the top of the list. This was said in a joint statement to the press, bringing together the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, and the President of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, who is on an official visit to our country. President Tebboune said his meeting with his Iranian counterpart was an opportunity to review the latest developments in the Sahel region and to raise the question of Western Sahara.
هذا اللقاء كان أيضا سانحا لاستعراض المستجدات في منطقة الساحل على ضوء الأوضاع السائدة وللتطرق إلى قضية الصحراء الغربية. وفي هذا الصدد أعرب عن ارتياحي لتطابق وجهات النظر ولتوافقنا على مواصلة الجهود للمساهمة في استتباب الاستقرار في هذه المنطقة وحفظ السلام والأمن الإقليمي والدولي.
The President of the Republic hailed the convergence of views and efforts to maintain peace and security on both regional and international levels.
لقاؤنا اليوم يعد خطوة هامة في هذا الاتجاه، وقد تطرقنا فيه إلى العلاقات الثنائية بصورة عامة مع فخامة الرئيس، وتباحثنا حول السبل الكفيلة لترقيتها. وأود في هذه المناسبة أن أجدد لفخامة الرئيس عزمنا على بذل الجهود الجادة من أجل الرقي بتعاوننا إلى المستوى الذي يعكس بحق الإرادة السياسية المشتركة.
And President Abdelmadjid Tebboune said he had a long and in-depth exchange with his Iranian counterpart on the current international situation, notably the Israeli aggression and crimes perpetrated in Gaza, praising in the meantime the positions of the Iranian leadership, which supports the Palestinian people and rejects the Israeli aggression in the face of the shameful silence of certain countries. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune said he had agreed with his Iranian counterpart on strengthening coordination and consultation of the Palestinian question, reaffirming the right of the Palestinian people to establish an independent state within the 1967 borders with Al-Quds as capital.
وأود في هذا الصدد أن أثمن مواقف القيادة الإيرانية الداعمة للشعب الفلسطيني المظلوم، مساعدته للفلسطينيين ورفضه لممارسات الكيان الصهيوني للإبادة الجماعية المستمرة في غزة في ظل صمت وتواطؤ مخزن من طرف بعض الدول. ولقد اتفقنا في هذا الخصوص على تكثيف التنسيق والتشاور حيال تطورات القضية الفلسطينية. وأود بالمناسبة أن أحيي الموقف الإيراني الداعم لعضوية بلادي في مجلس الأمن الدولي.
The President of the Republic then thanked the Iranian President for his participation in the 7th Summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, which he said was a success thanks to the friends and brothers of Algeria, notably Iran. The Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, for his part, affirmed the convergence of positions of Algeria and Iran regarding the war crimes and genocide committed against the Palestinian people.
Negotiations on the sidelines of the gas summit were very important as we have common positions with Algeria. Iran and Algeria advocate the right of the oppressed Palestinian people and believe that the Zionist entity commits war crimes against the Palestinian people. I respect the position of the Algerian president and the friend and sister country Algeria in terms of defending the rights of the oppressed Palestinian people.
The Iranian president, on the other hand, praised what he described as the perfect and excellent organization of the 7th GECF summit and congratulated President Tebboune for the success of this global event. Regarding bilateral relations linking Algeria to Iran, President Ibrahim Raisi described them as historic and profound, adding that he had discussed with the President of the Republic ways and means of strengthening the existing strong relations.
Through the discussion that we had, we tackled the promotion of bilateral cooperation in economy in addition to politics. We are committed to boosting economic relations. There is great potential in Algeria and there is great potential in Iran thanks to Iran's young people. We are ready to exchange with our friend and sister country Algeria all the potential and experience that we have. We hope that this visit makes a great success thanks to the decisions of the leaders of both countries and so that this cooperation covers all other sectors, notably trade, economy, politics and culture between both countries, and of course that cooperation extends to the scientific and technical sector.
He also hailed Algeria's position, stressing that she plays a vital role in terms of peace and stability in the region.
Algeria has positions that we respect. Algeria pays great attention to the security and stability of the region, and we see that this orientation under the leadership of President Tebboune is a positive orientation in favor of peace and stability in the region.
Let's recall that Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi is on an official visit to Algeria after participating in the 7th Summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. And now the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army General Said Shangriha has been received by Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense of the State of Qatar, Khalid bin Mohammed Al Attiyah, as part of his official visit to Qatar to take part in the 8th edition of the exhibition of the International Maritime Defense Conference, DIMDEX 2024. The details with Miriam Barshi.
During his meetings with Qatar's high-ranking officials, the Army General laid emphasis on the importance given by the President of the Republic, Supreme Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of the National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to strengthen the bonds of brotherliness and cooperation with the Qatar sister country. The Army General conveyed the greetings of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, who gives importance to the strengthening of brotherliness and cooperation bonds with Qatar and the strengthening of bilateral military relations. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense of the State of Qatar, Khalid bin Mohammed Al Attiyah, for his part, held strategic cooperation and partnership relations existing between Algeria and Qatar, stressing that they embody the strong will of the leaders of both countries. Meanwhile, Army General Said Shangriha discussed with the advisor to the Prince for Defense Affairs, General Hamad bin Ali Al Attiyah, the military cooperation between the two countries and examined ways and means to further strengthening them.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, received a phone call from his British counterpart, Lord David Cameron. Consultations between Algeria and the United Kingdom on bilateral relations and international questions of common concern, notably the humanitarian situation in Gaza. The two parties hailed the level of dialogue and political consultation between the two countries, notably the coordination between their permanent missions at the Security Council on Palestine, and convened to pursue efforts to reach an immediate ceasefire and the handling of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, assuring the delivery of the aid to the population. The two ministers also discussed the processing of application for the adhesion of Palestine at the UN as a concrete action in the process of consecration of the two-state solution in accordance with the UN relevant resolutions. Mr. Attaf renewed his invitation to his British counterpart for an official visit to Algeria. And the Energy Minister Mohammed Arkab has met with his Omani counterpart Salim Al-Aufi to examine ways and means of promoting and reinforcing cooperation between the two countries in the field of energy. During the meeting attended by the Ambassador of the Sultanate of Oman and the President Director General of the Hydrocarbon Sonatrach Group, the two sides examined bilateral relations existing between the two countries in energy and mines sector. And now the advisor to the cooperation at the Mauritanian Ministry of Energy, Ahmed Val Mohammadin, has affirmed that the conclusions of the 7th Gas Exporting Countries Forum Summit meeting had further strengthened the role of the forum in the context of the current global challenges. Mariam Barshi.
Mr. Ahmed Val Mohammadin stressed that the GCF gained in strength following the last summit thanks to the leading role of Algeria, with thanks to its strong capacities and major resources, has placed itself at the forefront in the field of hydrocarbons. He emphasized that Algeria has a strong expertise in that field, which made it one of the countries that guarantees global energy security and one of the main suppliers of the European market, highlighting that his country aspires to further cooperate with Algeria to benefit from its expertise, not only in the field of hydrocarbons, but also in all fields. Speaking of the bilateral cooperation, the Mauritanian executive said that the free zone in Tindouf, recently inaugurated by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, and his Mauritanian counterpart, Mr. Mohamed Ould El Ghazouani, and the laying of the foundation stone of the Tindouf-Zouairat motorway highlight the importance of the rich region.
And the Speaker of the Council of the Nation and the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Salah Goujil and Brahim Boughali, respectively, have congratulated the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, for the success of the 7th Summit of Heads of State and Government of Gas Exporting Countries Forum. And now to the Middle East. As the Israeli occupation pursued its bombardments of Gaza, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris called for an immediate ceasefire to allow in aid to the territory threatened by famine. The U.S. Vice President urged the Israeli occupation to do more to significantly increase the flow of aid, saying that there is no excuse that useless restrictions are still imposed on the funneling of aid. Other ceasefire calls were made, notably by the Arab League Secretary General, who stressed that depriving the Palestinians of aid was tantamount to a collective punishment and death penalty issued against the Palestinians. And meanwhile, the Gulf Cooperation Council also called for a ceasefire and for access to humanitarian aid to Gaza. This came as more airstrikes were carried out by the Israeli army against Gaza, targeting mainly in Rafah in the southern part of the territory. The bombardments claimed 124 lives for the past 24 hours, raising to over 30,500 the number of people killed since the Israeli occupation launched its operations on Gaza over 5 months ago. And addressing the Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva, the UN High Commission for Human Rights conflagration that would have implications for the whole Middle East countries and much more beyond. This came as the UN Security Council will hold informal discussions in 2 days' time at the request of Algeria to examine the situation in Gaza. 14 hours 44 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and I invite you now to listen to an interview conducted by my colleague Mohamed Khatel with an energy expert.
The 7th Summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum wound up here in Algiers with the adoption of the Algiers Declaration. To talk about the main outcomes of this summit, I am joined by eminent political analyst Professor Abdel Nour Toumi. Mr. Toumi, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on the show.
The 7th Summit meeting of Heads of State and Government of the gas exporting countries wound up with the adoption of the Declaration of Algiers, reaffirming its members' will to secure a stabilization of the gas market and the gas prices. Do you think that this summit has reached its set objectives?
As far as the seventh summit meeting of heads of state and government of the gas exporting countries, the GECF, is concerned, it is indeed comes in new, unique geopolitical and geoeconomics context because of the turmoil that has been going on for quite time now since the outbreak of the COVID-19 in 2020, following the Russian war in Ukraine, to the ongoing carnage that is taking place in Palestine in the aftermath of the colonial state army aggression in Gaza and lately in South Lebanon. So following all this geopolitical developments that are shaping the world affairs, in this sense, one did notice how this vital source of energy, gas, is important in international affairs, whether on the bilateral or on the integral level. And we did see how Moscow used this card as a lethal weapon toward its European customers like Germany, France, and Italy, following the sanctions imposed by the European countries on Russia. Thus, gas is really a relevant tool of exerting pressure in the equation of power struggle regionally and internationally. Hence, gas is no longer an economic energy product linked to the general theory of macroeconomics, supplies and demand. This is why the 12 countries, 7 observatory members of the GECF, have insisted in Algiers' declaration securing the stabilization of gas prices in the international market. As for the objectives, now the ball is in the GECF zone. They should play collectively and keep the ongoing homogeneity mode that occurred from Algiers summit. Now, in Algeria's position in the trajectory of its active and preemptive foreign policy, making this vital source of energy, gas, as a principal determinant in its foreign policy. This makes Algeria to become a force of stability and prosperity in the sub-region and region. We saw the presence of Libya, Tunisia, Mauritania, Senegal, and Nigeria, adding the presence of Italy as a special guest in the summit. All these elements indicate that Algiers is shaping intelligently its political environment through this wild card, which is gas, and making its European clients nervous, and particularly Spain and France.
One of the main points of the summit was the inauguration of the Gas Research Institute, whose headquarters is located in Algiers. How will this institute benefit to the member countries?
Speaking of the objectives, in fact, technology and research are also the backbone of this forum. Algeria has a solid experience in this domain. For instance, in the role of l'IAP, l'Institut Algérien de Pétrole, the Algerian Petroleum Institute, that school, a high technology school, was established, I believe, in 1965, at that time in collaboration or cooperation with the French Institute of Petroleum, l'Institut Français du Pétrole. So, with a mission at that time of providing or delivering engineers and high-skilled technicians to Sonatrach. So decades later, This is another opportunity for the forum members, notably the leading countries like Algeria, Qatar, Iran, and Russia, to cope with the global strategy of the forum in order to reach its goals quickly with high quality in terms of formation and skills.
The summit was marked by the adhesion of 3 new member countries, namely Senegal, Mauritania, and Mozambique. How significant their membership will be for the Gas Exporting Countries Forum?
The adhesion of Senegal, Mauritania, and Mozambique is very significant following the geopolitical and the economics context. The 3 African countries joining the GECF would make the African continent that is in a rapid growth and demand, particularly for energy, not only gas, but there is a new generation is also advocating for clean energy. Adding to that, the continent is no longer the window of natural disasters and political turmoil. Hence, the factors of instability did leave the country to live in permanent insecurity and lack of economic developments, opportunity, and prosperity. As a result, Algeria will benefit a great deal to not only increase its exportation on the African market of this vital source of energy, also would have a solid say in the region's geopolitics and economics. The latest rapprochement with Mauritania and the meeting between Algerian president and his counterpart, Mauritanian president in Tindouf, high significant meaning economically and politically as well. I mean, impacting the sub-regional order. Adding to that, the presence also and the cooperation with Nigeria, I mean, via the ongoing the Trans-Saharan pipeline is that is a project between Algiers via Niger, where it would connect or connect with existing pipelines across the Mediterranean to Europe.
The forum was hoping that the summit would culminate in the creation of the long-awaited Gas Exporting Countries Organization, similar to OPEC. Why, in your opinion, this action hasn't been agreed on?
I don't think the objective of the forum was to go to an announcement or to turn the GECF into geoeconomics cartel like the OPEC Plus. For the simple reason, the GECF is in the process to position itself, weighing in the world gas market on one hand, and send a solid message to its Western clients, including the U.S., who is, I mean, one has to mention that, is a major gas producer. Subsequently, from now on, the global north, or what we call the West, is certainly in the panic mode, and this goes in favor of the GECF members, because they would shape the equation of the South-North, in other words, between the global South and the global North, following the international order that is, or the new international order that is in the horizon. So the GECF cannot be either little brother of the OPEC Plus or another energy cartel playing in second division, because major countries in the GECF are playing a decisive role in the OPEC Plus, like Algeria, Qatar, Iran, Venezuela, even Russia, and even Venezuela.
10 heads of state and a large number of delegation heads took part in the Algiers summit. It's indeed an unprecedented and historic number. How can you translate this in a concrete way?
Algeria has long experience and rich history of such an event, and this goes to the 70s, where Algeria did host of the OPEC then summit in 1975. Interestingly enough, it is, the geopolitical context and geoeconomic context looks pretty much the same like we are living in these days. And Algeria's diplomacy was in its golden age. So Algiers was the capital of the tiers-mondisme paradigm and the voice of the voiceless, exactly like it is today, with its honorable positions on just causes in the world, whether on the Palestinian cause or Western Sahara, and also calling for a just world based on social justice and equality for all, including gas.
What are, according to you, the next steps that the forum's member countries will take following the Algiers Declaration?
This stance, following the geopolitical and geoeconomics turmoil that is taking place, this new geoeconomics gathering or forum could position itself in the trajectory of stability and prosperity, as it could act like a credible, virtually cartel in the new world order that is, as I stated earlier, in the horizon, creating a serious dynamic for a multipolar system and slow down the global north countries' hegemony. In some energy diplomacy, it has become a lethal weapon. We saw that with Putin, how he did challenge the Europeans' markets and whole economies, and it did slow their growth and creating, to some extent, even severe inflation in light of the war in Ukraine. Also, the GECP, the GECF members like Qatar, who is using its influence to shape world affairs, conflict resolutions, like its mediation role between the U.S. and Taliban in Afghanistan in 2018-2019, which caused the Doha process, and lately its mediation role in the indirect negotiations between the Palestinian resistance and the colonial states. Also, the GECF countries could also pressure the Europeans and the U.S. to press the colonial state from its state of denial vis-à-vis international law and the international community as a whole, that the latter lost its morality because of the continuous inhumanity and impunity of the colonial state. Finally, the GECF looks like it will get a bright future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toomey, for joining us. Thank you very much indeed.
And thank you very much, and thank you for having me on. Thank you.
إذاعة الجزائر الدولية، إشراقة جديدة كل صباح، إطلالة على آخر المستجدات الوطنية والعربية والدولية على مدار الساعة، إضاءة يومية على نجوم الفن والرياضة والاقتصاد